So, one of the medias we have that I did not discuss in our previous videos about the difference between media is, well, games. Probably one of the most popular medias in the world. Everybody plays games. Might be board games, maybe card games, mobile games, computer games, whatever. But the point stands that a game is a media and it definitely has its own fandoms out there. Whether or not you're an otaku, a weeb, or whatever you want to call it, or even if you're just a normie, which is a normal person that's not really involved in the otaku business or the otaku world, chances are you've played a game or two. Maybe a simple game of rock, paper, scissors, or some other games. The point is, it's an entertainment, it's a fun thing to do. So, yeah, people do it for fun or for the heck of it. And when it comes to otaku, well, games are a straightforward thing. It's an entertainment that entertains us. And the only real difference between games otaku plays and non-otaku player plays are basically the theme, how it's drawn, how it's illustrated, and how it's marketed. So, what are the pros? What are the cons of games? And what are the scope of a game as a media? So, I think I'll begin exploring that last thing first. A game is a final product. Now, given that the purpose of some medias are to promote other medias, a game's purpose is not to promote another media. If anything, the other medias are usually being used to promote said games. Now, a really easy example of this is, well, video games. Now, what am I talking about? Why video games of all things? Now, if any of you are familiar with mobile gaming, and I'm not talking about mobile phone, I mean these, PlayStation Vita, Nintendo Switch, or whatever you want to call it, chances are, if you like physical copies, you know one of these. Be it for Vita, DS, 3DS, Switch, PlayStation Portable, if that's still a thing for you, or whatever. But why am I taking this game out specifically? This game belongs to a popular series called the Fate series. And the first exposure is not an advertisement. Yeah, it's an advertisement, but the real first exposure is the franchise itself. It expands a franchise, and the franchise that has existed before it is being effectively used to promote it, which is why it has several characters that are available in those previously standing franchises, and it's just adding in new characters, new units, so to say, into the story. And it's such a big business that in terms of value, it might even be bigger than the original medias themselves. And I'm not talking random ass figures here. For example, if you know one of these, in itself, these cost quite a bit. Original games are pricey. That's why people pirate these games, so that they can play it more affordably if they have to pay for the piracy, or so that they can play it for free if they're that cheap. But anyways, usually there's the normal version, which are these, or there are the deluxe version, like these. Now, the deluxe versions usually comes with merchandises. Obviously, I kept mine. It came with cloth posters, a bunch of cards, and the one I like the most is the art book, which is, you know, basically a book detailing the artist's works. Now, obviously some people, they just want to play the game, but these collectibles are really appreciated, and I do enjoy collecting them, which is why I got myself the deluxe version of the game, not the normal version of the game. But that just proves how much these are in demand, that, well, because there are demands, supplies are made. And that shows something. That shows something. Because the fact that piracy is such a problem, and it accounts for so much loss in the industry, but despite all of that, these companies are still able to make all of these deluxe items, these deluxe products, these premium goods. It's because even with that much loss from piracy, even with that much buffer in terms of profit, it's still making so much money that it's stupidly profitable. Now, given a game is really expensive to make, if you often look up how movies are made and the budget it takes, try to do the same for games. You'll see that it's usually the same, if not even higher, because when you're making a game, essentially you have to prepare a story if your game ever needs one, which most games nowadays definitely do. Even with the old games they do. You still need to make the character graphics. You need to prepare the world, all the modules, all the ground texture, sky texture, grass texture, all of that. And then, in the cases of most games, you're gonna need voice acting, so you have to pay for the voice actors as well. So that's story writer, illustrator, character graphic designer, world designer, voice actors, and those are usually a team of people, not just one individual. For example, character graphic designer, that's not one person. If one person has to do all the work to make one game, well, let's just say most games would not even be out by now, because that's how much work it takes. And when you factor in the fact that you need to pay these people over an extended amount of time without actually seeing any revenue in return for that period of time, called the development time, yeah, it costs a lot. It's a really heavy investment. It's like a gamble. If it pays off big time, but if it fails, it's a huge loss, like really big loss. How lost? I'm shitting my pants kind of loss. It's that kind of loss. And it's a phenomenal thing that even with that kind of gamble, even with that kind of risk, these products are still being churned out every year, heck, every season. That just shows how popular this media is. So it's gotta have its own pros and cons, right? Well, yeah, and we're gonna get to that now. What are the pros? Obviously, games comes in many different form and factors. There are some games that are playable on your PC, and there are some games playable on your portable devices or consoles, or whatever you want to call them. So, for PC games in particular, you have choices. You can play it on your laptop, which usually comes with some detailed downgrade because laptops are not as strong as desktop PCs, or you can play them on your desktop, which usually comes with upgrades because your desktops are probably stronger than your laptop if you're a gamer. But what does that mean? That means that effectively you have so much choices in how you want to consume your media and how you want to consume your media. I mean, when, where, all of that you essentially can experience the same media in different ways. For example, for the currently popular game like Genshin Impact, there's a huge difference in the experience of PC players, console players, which is the PlayStation 4 players, and also the mobile players, because their hardwares have so much difference in specs that they're basically experiencing a totally different game. That also applies to the controls, because obviously when you're playing a PC, you have more freedom. You can control it with a controller, you can control your mouse and keyboard, and yeah, all those other shenanigans. When you're playing on your phone, you're stuck with the usual mobile interface. And when you're playing on a console like PlayStation 4, obviously you're stuck with the PlayStation 4's method of choice, the controllers. So yeah, just by that, you can have different experiences with one game. Now, take that multiple experience and take it to other games. And this doesn't apply to just otakus and weeps and all the anime lovers. No, this applies to even normie gamers, like PUBG, Fortnite. Play it on your phone, PC, PS4, Xbox, whatever. You're gonna have an entirely different experience, because that's just how it feels. How we control things is different, how we interact with it is different. Even how we play it is different, because for me, I use all of the platforms. I use my PC, I use my phone, I use my consoles. And the thing is, when I'm at home and I have free time, that's when I decide, okay, I'm gonna play my game and I'm gonna play it. That's final. No one's changing that. But sometimes when I'm on the go, obviously I cannot be whooping out my PC on the cafeteria and start taking out my controllers. No, I can't do that. Which is why I play on my mobile. And the mobile experience is quite different. I see a downgrade in graphics, downgrade in speed, and all that shit. The control is different, how I interact is different. Even the size of the device I'm looking at is different. Which is why it's such a different experience for me. And is that a pro or a con? That depends on how you want to see it. If you want things to be simple, obviously, that's a con. But if you enjoy the different experiences like me, that's a pro. Like for example, for me, when I'm playing certain events, I actually find playing on mobile to be way easier. And when I'm playing other events, I'll be playing with my PC. And even then, sometimes I'd play some events using the controller and some other events using the mouse and keyboard, because it just gives me that kind of leeway. So if you don't mind the extra process, but you want that extra benefits, then it's such a big pro. And then there's the sheer gallery. If you want dating sim, you get dating sim. You want an adult game, you get an adult game. You want to play for free, you can play for free. You want to pay to win, you can pay to win. A game has so much freedom, so much liberty in how you want to interact with it, that as a media, I can't help but say that it might be one of the best medias out there. And when it comes to a franchise, like I mentioned in the Danmachi as a franchise video, that it has a game called Danmachi Memoria Fris, and the story is essentially the same. It's just that it takes the story from not the novel, but the anime. It's just that it has some parts taken from the novel for special stories. It has its character graphics and all that taken from the anime. It also has its CGs taken from the anime screenshots. And that's not exactly a bad thing. Sure, it's downgrade. No full voice, no movement. But there is a pro too. Why? Because one, the character design, character graphics are way more profound and way more stable. Why? Because they don't have to draw things frame by frame. They can just draw one super good character graphic and they can use it again and again and again and again. And that's not a bad thing. Why? Because the interface is like a visual novel interface. And once it's the game time, when it's the duel, battle, or whatever you will call it time, it's an entirely different interface. We don't factor the stories in anymore. And then there's the sheer character. Different costumes, different story, event stories especially, which is an entirely unique new story, which means new content ultimately, being added into the franchise that if we do not play the game, we might never know about. Which is why I'm saying that the franchise in this case is being used to promote the game, not the game being used to promote the franchise. This is a huge difference compared to the other medias, because when we're talking anime, it's usually being used to promote the manga or the novel. And when we're talking about manga, it's usually used to promote the novel, unless it's the original source and there's no novel for it. So in any case, these other medias, mangas and animes, usually promote the manga or the light novel or the novels. On the other hand, all of these, the anime, the manga, and the novels, all of them are being used to promote the game. So in terms of focus and purpose, the game does not have to limit itself in terms of content. Another example of this is Sword Art Online as a franchise. In my Sword Art Online as a franchise video, I did mention that the game verse actually has a separate story to the anime verse or the novel verse. New characters, different event, different plot, different twists, and all that. Sure, the general line is the same. The game they go through are the same. But when you're adding in different characters, when you're adding in a different twist to the stories, when you're adding all of these random elements, the story just diverges. It diverges so much that, to be honest, I must agree, it's an entirely different universe, even though it's the same franchise, Sword Art Online. Like, seriously. Look at this picture I'm gonna post here. How is that the same as Sword Art Online, the anime? Sure, you see Kirito there, you see Asuna there, you see Lifa, you see Klein, Ego, you know, the usual guys. Celica, Sino, Philia, all that, sure. But who are these? That's right, if you don't play the games, you don't know. And trust me, when it comes to these characters, I love them just as much as the characters you might know from watching the anime. Heck, for some of them, I actually love them more than the characters that I'd know from the novel. Because, well, I experience them in a different way. When I'm reading the novel, I'm like, okay, this guy or this girl is saying this or that. On the other hand, when I'm playing a game, I don't need to think about that. I don't need to imagine that. It's all voiced. So I just have to enjoy it. I just have to perceive it. I just have to listen to it. And I'm getting all of the content I need. And what happens is, instead of imagining the scene, I can focus on getting immersed in the scene, which is an entirely different ballgame. Now, novels themselves, mangas, are not bad. They have their own pros and cons, and I will get into that later. But this video is about games, and the thing about these games are, because they don't have to promote anything else, because they themselves are a final product, they can do whatever they want, essentially. They want to add in new stories? Sure. Heck, I'd love it if they did. They want to add new characters? Go ahead. They want to add exclusive content? They want to add new mechanics? No problem. Like, absolutely no problem. And another thing is, with games, you get to scratch that particular itch. Like, for example, even if you don't like Sword Art Online as a series, don't you think it'd be cool if we get to experience the world of Aincrad? Don't you think it'll be cool if we get to experience the world of Gun Gale Online or Alfheim Online? Don't you? I know I do. And with games, even though we're not getting the full dive experience, we are getting to interact with those worlds, those contents. So yeah, you're essentially scratching that itch. And it's not just Sword Art Online. Boku no Hero Academia, they have these PS4 games and PC games. Well, it's multiple ports. My Heroes won Justice. And in these scenarios, you essentially get to scratch that itch that, hey, All Might versus All for One. It's a cool fight. It's a respectable fight. Epic fight. I enjoyed that fight. But Deku is the star of the movie. Deku is the star of the series. I kind of want to have Deku fight All for One instead. But you can't do that in the anime because it's fixed. With the game, on the other hand, you get to choose the character you want to fight who with. So, Deku versus All Might? Go ahead. Deku versus All for One? Go ahead. Shoto versus Bakugo? Go ahead. Shoto versus All for One? Go ahead. Hawk versus All for One? Go ahead. Do whatever you want. That's the kind of freedom games offer you. And that's a very big pro. Alright, I'm praising the hell out of game. As a media, it's definitely good. But what are the cons? Now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, original games are pricey as heck. Now, given if you're a mobile game player, yeah, you can get many games for free. It's just that many of them are pay to win or gacha games, in which case if you want everything, you kind of need to pay in the end. But when we're talking about these big AAA games, you pay up front and then you get to play it forever. Even though you get to play it forever though, these games are pricey. So that's definitely a con. It's such a big con that despite people wanting to support the community, despite people wanting to support the whole franchise, piracy ends up a thing. Now, it's different when you're pirating an anime or a manga compared to when you're pirating a game. And I'll be explaining that on another video. But the thing is, that's the thing. So, this con is so big that it basically shoots the entire franchise in its own foot. But it doesn't mean that just because it's a con, you just leave it there. No, there's always ways of handling the con. For example, if, like me, and you're not just a PC player, you buy physical copies of games, you can resell this or buy these secondhand. If you buy these secondhand, yeah, sure, maybe there are scratches. Maybe they're missing some of the collectibles if you want the deluxe editions. Or if you don't want the deluxe editions and you just want to play the game, maybe there are some love marks, which is basically wears and tears on the disc itself or the chip itself, but it doesn't really damage the game, so you can experience it for a way cheaper price. Now, in this case, you're not pirating, you're just reusing or recycling these games without actually recycling it. Is it bad? Yes, but no. Why? Because the same as the case of piracy, you're not really contributing to the franchise, you're not really contributing to the market, but you're kind of saving the environment without going against the law, because it's a thing. So yeah, there's that. Or if you like to buy soft copies online instead, then just wait for discounts, because if you buy games on Steam or Epic Games, very often they'd have these big sales, summer sale, whatever sale they want to call it, producer sales, whatever, that these games get a 70% cut in price. Buy it during those times. They'll save you a lot. So that's one way of handling the con, while also contributing to the market or the industry without, you know, committing piracy. So yeah, it really depends on how you see this. But that's not all. It's just such a big flaw that it seems like that's it, but it's not it. It's still not done yet. There are still other cons to games, different from the other medias, because they don't have to promote any other media. They can do whatever they want. And that's a good thing. You're getting more content. But at the same time, more content equals more time. And if you're a person who cannot balance your time between work and private, or you know, what you need to do and what you want to do, that's a bad thing, because games, unlike anime, which usually takes what, 24 minutes, 25 minutes, or in some cases 45 minutes tops per episode, unless we're talking about a movie, in which case 2 hours or 3 hours. A game's kind of made for long-term use, and you're not gonna finish in 1, 2, 3 hours. You're gonna take days, well, not days, hours, basically hours to finish the game. And even when you finish the game's gonna update and get more content, which means more time. And if you can't control yourself, that might be a problem. It's like trying to drink off a bottle with a straw, but then you have a hose filling in the bottle. You're just not doing shit. And there's addiction and all that other stuff. But really, it comes down to the persons themselves. If you can control yourself, it's not even something you need to worry about. It's not even something you need to think about. And So yeah, that's the game. So as a media, is it a God tier or is it a broadcast tier? It's a God tier, definitely a God tier. No arguing against that. Games are that good. I mean, if they aren't that good, how could it be such a profitable industry? So if the question is, should I get into games? You should analyze first. Do you have time? If yes, go. If no, can you control yourself? If yes, go. If no, don't. And then another question, what kind of game should I play? Now that depends on what kind of genre you want to play. Are you okay with gore? Are you not okay with gore? If you're okay with gore, then play light fantasy. If you're not okay with if you're okay with gore, go play dark fantasy or light fantasy. Anything goes. If you're not okay with gore, go play light fantasy. Stay away from the dark fantasy. If you like gambling, gacha games. Gacha games, everyone. I mean, all my games, almost all of my games are gacha games, so gacha games for the win. But what if you don't want to gamble? You want to feel strong, but you want to be competitive. My answer is, if you want to be competitive, but you don't want to pay, stick to a game that's not PvP. Stick to a single player game. Now, if you want to be strong, you're okay with paying, and you want to win against other player, like literally win, go for those pay to win PvPs. There's a lot. I'm not gonna name them, but just saying, there's a lot. Those games are literally just games where you dump your money and basically see number 1, insert your name here, and you're done with it. It's literally those games. Is it a good thing? For me? No. I don't really like those kind of games. Why? Games are made to be fun, and it's also made as an entertainment. And because it's made as an entertainment, it should entertain, not drain. If the whole purpose of a game is to make money without thinking about the player, at that point it's just a gambling then. Go to a casino, not a games. But if a game takes money but delivers good content, that means the game is also thinking about the consumers, and it's a good game. Which is why I enjoy games like Fate Grand Order, which is why I enjoy games like Genshin Impact, surprisingly. So yeah. And then another question. Okay, taking away the time, taking away the money, competitiveness, etc., etc. Just strictly as content. Should I play a game? Should I give a game a go? Again, that depends. Do you want story? Do you not want story? If you don't want story, then sure. But you're kind of limiting yourself on the type of games you might want to play. In which case, you might want to play games like World of Warcraft, Defense of the Ancients, or PUBG, Fortnite, that kind of game. If you want story, you can go to a more Japanese game like visual novels, Edo Gaze, Fate Grand Order, etc., etc. Gacha games usually also have good stories, even if they're Chinese made, like Genshin Impact and Honkai Impact. And then, if we're not talking about story as the content, but we're talking about everything else, like character design, art, music, inserts, all that, then maybe not older games, and maybe not non-story games. But if you stick with story games with RPG elements or Japanese elements, then you should be safe. So, as a total summary of everything, be it the content, the story, the media within the media, and all of that, How high do I rank a game as a media? Top tier. No questions. So yeah, this video explains games. So maybe the next video might explain something else. So if you're interested in this series, go ahead and check out the other videos. You can feel free to comment if you have a different opinion or have similar opinions, and like and subscribe if you want. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. See you next time.